So if you've watched my last video, you'll notice something that most supporters of capitalism claim, and that is that capitalism is a meritocracy.
If you find what you're really good at and work hard, you might have great success and make a lot of money. It promotes personal freedom and rewards hard work, talent, and achievement.
Or in other words, whether or not you succeed or fail is entirely up to you. If you merely try hard enough, you will be successful. This is something I have heard capitalists say many times, so in this video I'm going to analyze whether or not capitalism truly rewards hard work. I will examine this claim within the theory of capitalism, as well as observing whether or not the actual practice of capitalism works this way. A meritocracy is defined by Oxford as a country or social system where people get power or money on the basis of their ability. So if you are poor, it is because your ability put you there. You would have no one to blame but yourself. If you would simply work harder, you would make much more money. Those who have money would deserve it, as they got in their position through hard work and effort. Well, before examining any data from the real world, I think it will be useful to examine how capitalism works as an idea first. So think about how one makes money. Well, you're either hired by someone or you already own enough money to do the hiring, so you can make more money from that person you hired. A majority of the time, the first example is true. However, since this means that a majority of the time it is not yourself who decides whether or not you are hired, but someone else. The person who is hiring has many different factors for choosing a candidate, which don't necessarily have to depend on that person's ability. Perhaps he professes himself to be reasonably knowledgeable and doesn't believe you are good enough, even if you are. Perhaps he doesn't like you on some subconscious level. Even if you disregard personal traits, he simply may not want to hire you because your skills just aren't as in demand as they were when you first started training. Therefore, your success doesn't just depend on your skill, desires, and person, but upon another's. I also believe another case can be made from examining the ideas of capitalism. There can only be a certain amount of high-paying jobs. Since all employers want to make as much money for themselves as possible, they would only want to offer a limited number of high-paying jobs. The only reason a job can even be called high-paying in the first place is because there's jobs that don't pay as high. High only makes sense when there is something below it. So if we are to assume, for sake of argument, that a huge amount of hard-working and determined workers were looking to succeed, they simply all can't succeed because there can only be a certain number of high-paying jobs. Therefore, before even examining any information from the real world, it's shown that capitalism doesn't care just about how hard you work. There are more factors in play than just yourself. But what does the real world actually show? Well, if how hard you work determines your wealth, this means we can examine how productive workers are and compare this to their wages. If capitalism rewards hard work, then productivity should match hand in hand with how much workers are paid. Well, such a study has been done. Information from the Bureau of Labor shows that hard work and wages actually look pretty good for about 2 decades. However, after that, we see a different story entirely. Productivity climbs. However, the money that workers are making fails to climb along with it. Neither does there seem to be so-called class or social mobility. Research from the Brookings Institute found that, quote, the rags to riches story is much more common in Hollywood than on Main Street. Only 6% of children born to parents with family income at the very bottom move to the very top. This study also shows that only about a third of Americans ever end up making more than their parents, and another third actually end up making less than their parents, and about a quarter end up riding the tide, which means they make more than their parents, yet they remain in the same economic position. Research done by Richard Reeves and Isabel Sawhill demonstrates that rich high school dropouts remain in a better economic position than poor college graduates. In other words, a poor kid who does everything right does not end up as well off as a rich kid who does everything wrong. So looking at both the theory and practice of capitalism shows absolutely no evidence that capitalism rewards hard work. Such a thing is merely a myth proposed by idealists who wish to further the current system. Capitalism is not a meritocracy, but an oligarchy.